My name is Harriet Festing, and I'm director of Higher Ground, which is the largest flood survivor network in the US. And I'm joined by Virginia Wasserberg, who heads up Stop the Flooding Now in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the history of setting up Stop the Flooding Now, and you're going to show me a few things as well, Virginia. But before we do that, I just want to remind anybody who's watching this that if your community is impacted by flooding and you need help, please join Higher Ground. We're here to help. You can first join our Facebook group and then join the actual network. So Virginia, we are really honored to have you, not only speaking today, but you've been a long-term member of the Higher Ground Network, one of our first members, and you've joined the Higher Ground Leadership Council. So we're incredibly grateful to have you here. I know you want to show me a few things, but let's just start. Could you just tell me a little bit about what got you to set up Stop the Flooding Now? I know that you yourself were directly impacted by flooding. So can you tell people a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks for having me here today, Harriet, and thanks for all those warm greetings. I really appreciate that. And it's an honor of mine, actually, to be a part of this group. But the thing that got me started with Stop the Flooding Now is this creek that's behind me. It filled up during the tropical storm rains that we got from Hurricane Matthew on October the 8th, 2016. And it filled up and it overflowed. And my house was just not too far away from where we're standing now. And that overflow of this creek flooded my house. So after restoring the house and getting things back into order, naturally, as anybody else would feel, I felt like I didn't want my house to flood again. And I got involved just a little bit in my local civic league and found out that the city was requesting pictures of flooding. They had told us in a small meeting that we had of just some of us civic league members that they didn't know where it flooded and they needed pictures of flooding. So I jumped right on that day and created a Facebook page to give pictures of flooding, and it just kind of snowballed and it went on to where it is now, in more of an advocacy and more of awareness.
Right. And you are out in the field, and I know you wanted to show us a little bit about some of the improvements that were made since you got Stop the Flooding Now going.
Right. So is it okay if I just kind of go off camera for a moment here?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I can figure out, I see it. So this is the presidential canal, and it didn't used to look like this here. It used to be just grown. Everything used to be all grown up all over here, and it was just lots of brush and things of that nature, and you really couldn't. It was difficult to maneuver around, but as you can see, it's not difficult anymore. And these rocks that have bermed up this part of the end of the canal, they weren't there either until we got involved and really started, saying, hey, we need help. And so the city finally funded a project to come out here, and they cleared away all of the brush that was here and really got into this creek. And one of the things they did is they dredged this creek, so they created more capacity in the creek by making it deeper. They did not make it wider, but they made it deeper, and put up these rocks to help keep the land in place and all filter water and things of that nature. So that's really the gist of what this project that we're out here was able to accomplish.
Right. Which links to a question that I have if you want to go back onto the screen.
Right. Okay. Let me just flip it around for you here. I'm going to get it. There we go.
Yay.
Oops. There. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So your house, did that get destroyed? Is that still existing? And then do you still see it as a vulnerable home? And that kind of links to this issue that I know that you've been playing a key role in advocating for disclosure laws. So tell me little bit about those mix of questions.
Right. Yeah. So the house did not get destroyed. It got about 22, 24 inches of water on the first floor of the house. And but there still is the potential for this creek to overflow again. In fact, in September of last year, when a hurricane came through Virginia Beach, the top of these rocks had water at the very top. So this creek was about to overflow again, and that was not from rain, that was just from wind. So the idea here is I didn't want to flood again. I ended up selling my house. But unfortunately, in the state of Virginia, there is not a there's not flood disclosure. There's only a little blurb in there when you go to buy a house that directs you to a website where you can learn more information about flooding and if the house is in a flood zone and things like that.
So let me just interrupt you. Just say a little bit more about what flood disclosure is.
Well, it discloses that the house has flooded. Just plain and simple. Just like you disclose that there's lead paint in the house or that there's a meth lab that's been in the house, disclosing that the house has flooded. And there are states in our country that do that. Some of them do it really great. Some of them do it to a level that's not really so great. So we've been working trying to get the General Assembly in Virginia to do more than just direct people to a link. That is one of the accomplishments that we have gotten, because it didn't even have the link 2 years ago. So we got the link, and we're trying to get them to do more. The thing we tried this year was to get them to disclose that the house was actually in a flood zone, which is it's a weak flood disclosure because it doesn't disclose that the house has been flooded. But that just didn't go. It was really surprising to me that a Democrat-led majority in the General Assembly, House and Senate and Governor couldn't get that passed. That was very surprising.
And from my memory, not to give this as an excuse to those politicians, which is unexcusable, but from my memory, that also came from some very strong lobbying from who did the lobbying? Am I right?
Against it?
Against it, yes.
Yes, the real estate lobby
Right.
lobbied very strongly against that weak disclosure of just, disclosing that a house is in a flood zone, which, in going since then, that was in the winter months of this year. And since that time frame, I found out that there's multiple real estate agents that just kind of look at that and say, why? We want that. There are a lot of real estate agents that want that disclosure in the information, because when you go to buy a house, it's good to know before you put that money down and before you enter into the contract to purchase the house, that the house is in a flood zone, because you don't find that out till kind of at the end of the contractual agreement, right before you're about to get the keys to the house. And that can really run the whole thing amok. It can just really ruin the whole process. Some people actually pull out at that point because now they can't afford the mortgage payment and the flood insurance. So this information of just having that information up front for a homeowner is good for a real estate agent, but for an advocate like me, yes, I don't want to see somebody waste their time, waste their money if they don't want to live in a flood zone. We should have that information available to us, and it's almost taking away our right, an infringement upon our rights as human beings to know that we're going to live in a place that floods. I mean, to not give us that information is just boggles my mind.
Right. And in fact, I think it was last week or the week before, we interviewed Helen Lekovich from Midlothian, Illinois. They actually do have flood disclosure laws that are a little bit stronger, but they don't include foreclosed properties. and her neighbors see these foreclosed, these properties that just get foreclosed again and again and again because of flooding. And indeed, there had been flooding that week, and that same property that she kept looking at had flooded again. It's just shocking. It's just terrible. It's brutal. People put their whole life savings down for this property. I feel like saying shame on you, real estate industry, but as you were saying, there are some realtors who actually want the disclosure. Um,
Yes, in fact, the state delegate that carried the legislation for the past two sessions in the General Assembly is a real estate agent. So,
oh,
you know,
wow, how interesting. Wow, wow, wow. Just shows how complicated these, how split people are. Um,
right, right.
so other issues that I know that you have been engaged with include new developments that you felt might make the area more vulnerable. And I think also you've been involved in analysing the city's budget. Could you tell me about both or either of those issues?
Right. Well, a lot of development that the city is interested in, even right now at this time, I think I'm aware of at least four major developments that are within this region of the city that would actually dump more stormwater this way into this creek, into a lake that feeds this creek, or it's all connected. So it would be maybe into a creek that feeds the lake that feeds this creek. So, it's and it would put more stormwater into this. So, me being concerned about, the neighborhood where my house was, I don't want to see the people that purchased my home have to go through what I went through. What a nightmare to have to go through that. So I'm still working at it because, I couldn't go to them and tell them, hey, don't buy this house. But I can still help, and I can still work to make sure their house doesn't flood. So, that's one of the issues of developments that affect, this neighborhood that's behind me and that I'm in. And then there are other developments in other parts of the city, particularly, specifically in the southern part of Virginia Beach. It floods there on an annual basis, a couple of times, a year. And that's just from wind tides. So, that sunny day flooding that we talk about, it doesn't have to rain, and those people get flooded. And so we've done work in, going to the city and speaking with city engineers and speaking with city council people and different members of the city staff, and then trying to integrate the community into that conversation with them and let them know, where the vulnerabilities are when it comes to flooding in the southern part of the city, and get people interested in what's going on there. And there's also this issue of the Back Bay in Virginia Beach. Some of that is actually under attack from stormwater pollution as well. So there's just that's just the southern part. I'm in the central part of Virginia Beach, and in the northern part of Virginia Beach, it has flooding issues as well. So
wow.
Those are,
Wow.
It's Virginia Beach is a big city, and there's a lot that's going on, and there's a lot to work with.
Right, right. And just a reminder to people that when you build homes in flood-prone areas, you're not just making the new homeowners vulnerable to flooding because you're moving them into an area that's prone to flooding, but you're making everybody's flooding vulnerability so much worse because you're removing permeable paving, you're removing natural areas that are absorbing that water, paving it
Right.
over and putting more and more stormwater into what is currently failing infrastructure. So
Correct. An example of that is in the southern part of Virginia Beach. It's a very agriculture area, and so and there's a lot of marshland, there's a lot of swampland that's there, and that is in a lot of wetland that's there. So that's area that actually soaks up that water that comes in from the sound in North Carolina, because floodwaters don't recognize state borders,
right.
So it just blows in from North Carolina from the south, and that land is there, and it's very valuable, it's very precious,
right.
And there are a lot of developers that see it in a different value, and not that they're I don't mean to sound bad towards them, because everybody needs to make a buck and pay the bills and put food on the table, and I get that, but when you're going to do that and you're going to destroy a very precious and valuable piece of land, that's not a good idea.
Right.
Find a different spot. Find a different spot.
And given that people are already flooding and, as in your case, actually losing their homes, then actually what they could or should be doing is converting some of that agricultural land into wetlands, doing the opposite of what they're doing.
They absolutely should, and that's part of working with what we talked about, working with the city budget here in Virginia Beach and understanding that it's billions of dollars, so it takes a lot of work to try to figure that out. A lot of time spent communicating with different city staff members, and really intricately figuring out what's going on. But there was a piece in a budget that was just passed earlier this month that was going to get thrown out, but thankfully did not. And it was it's only 5.2 million with an M dollars for a site acquisition, which would be buying up pieces of property in the southern part of Virginia Beach, and actually I believe some over in this neighborhood where I'm standing, buying up properties that have flooded multiple times, and giving those people, I think, around fair market value for that, and then giving the water a place to go in that land. So, like I said, it was going to get cut out. It was recommended to get cut out because, everybody's budget right now due to coronavirus is just tanked. So there had to be cuts. And, I spoke with our vice mayor concerning that. So please don't do that, and sent an email to the city council. And I didn't follow, everything that they said, but thankfully it was put back in, and we're gonna get that money for the people that need it.
And that sounds fantastic news. I do remember you sharing concerns about that as well, though, that actually they could potentially buy out the homes and redevelop the land. Is that still so? So for people who don't know, it kind of depends on the program, but many programs that are federally funded buyout programs, you have to leave that land as open space and normally as some kind of stormwater retention, wetlands or something to help alleviate the flooding. But in city funded projects, they don't have to do that. And sometimes what they do is buy out homes and actually redevelop and put more homes in that space. Is that still a fear?
It is. There is that danger that will happen. It is a fear of mine that will happen because this is a city-funded program. And I'm not exactly clear as to where all the funds come from at the city level to buy this out. Now, of course, it's not recommended, on the forefront to do that. But there is that danger that somebody might come along and say, oh yeah, let's redevelop this. So really, it's really important for someone like me and others that really care to be involved enough in the conversation to encourage our city council members to create a program that doesn't do that doesn't redevelop the land. Now, I've been told the redevelopment is just for, they wanted to leave it open so that they could put in a stormwater pump or something like that. But, let's be realistic. Is that really going to happen? I don't know. So it's, the federal program does say no development whatsoever. And I think that is the best way to proceed, especially with a piece of property that, floods repetitively. And there's no reason to rebuild, to put anybody back in that situation. That's actually, it's cruel. It's cruel to do that. So hopefully that won't happen. I have great hope that the people in charge of this are not cruel.
Right. One thing I learned from working with you, Virginia, is the need actually to deal with so many things with a degree of skepticism until proven, until the intention is proven to be genuine. And another issue which relates to that very much is the issue of stormwater fees. And so for people who don't know, cities tend not to have any specific pot of money for investing in stormwater infrastructure. And so they have no way of actually repairing creeks in the way they have just done that. And so they've been very keen across the country to introduce stormwater fees. And I, in my former career, was a really strong advocate of stormwater fees. You know, you need to pay for something and you need to have the money. And then I have since realized that many cities then siphon that money off and use it for something completely different. I'm so naive that I would have ever, it just wouldn't occur to me that, again, that a city could be so cruel. And I know that that has been an issue that you have been concerned about in Virginia Beach. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, well, it's something that I've actually advocated for, that we have a stormwater fee here in Virginia Beach. It's basically a tax. You could call it a fee, but it's a tax. And it's a tax for letting water hit your property, run off your property, and go into a stormwater drain and into a system like what's behind me. So you pay a fee for that. And that money can go to do the things that you see that have been done here. But I've advocated to lock that money up and say we have multiple capital improvement projects here in Virginia Beach that are specifically for flood mitigation. And so I've been advocating lock that up and put those fees for that flood mitigation or for sea level rise mitigation. And don't use that money for anything else. And when you say anything else, what would it be? Well, because it's not locked up and it's under the category of stormwater, you can redevelop, the city can redevelop another piece of property somewhere in the city. And when you go to redevelop, the stormwater infrastructure has to be taken up, put somewhere else, the land redeveloped and it put back in, or, it has to be improved upon. The stormwater has to be improved upon. And that's where they use the fee to improve upon that, and which is great for the new development.
Right.
But it's not great for somebody whose house just flooded.
So essentially, it's facilitating new development and potentially new vulnerability for everyone.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't want to see a new development be developed poorly when it comes to stormwater.
Right.
So I suppose there could be a balance between, using the money for the stormwater of a new development and using the money for, say, a flood mitigation project.
Right. So you have had a documentary. You have a documentary filmmaker following you for, I believe, about a year, sharing your story, which is an unusual story because of your religious and political beliefs. Can you, and so you're not seen as the normal kind of environmentalist. You don't fit the category. Can you tell people a little bit more about that?
Right, yes. Well, I am a conservative that believes in climate change, so
Yay!
that is, that's unheard of, but and the reason why I believe in it is because water entered my house. I wasn't a believer before that, and then when water entered my house, I wanted to know why water came into my house. I really had this, it was almost like a therapeutic mission, if you will, to find out why water came into my house. And in doing so, teaming up with you guys and you teaming me up with Thriving Earth Exchange and the scientist, Dr. Michelle Covey, she's retired now, but teaming up with Dr. Covey and learning that science and really delving into that, my eyes were open that, this is real. And that, the sea level is rising and there are proven scientific data for that. So the whole documentary is about that. It's about following that journey and that journey that I have been on and still am on from the time my house flooded to now. And this whole role that we're doing here together through Higher Ground and what we're talking about with advocacy at the city level, the state level, the community level, and beyond. It's been a little bit at the federal level, but
which is a nice segue. Tell me a little bit more about your joining Higher Ground. What was helpful to you? Why you joined it? What more you'd like to see happen from it?
Well, I joined it because I needed help. We all need help, but seriously, I joined it because I was searching for answers and I was searching for a way to make sure my house didn't flood again. I believe you contacted me and you found our Facebook page.
So
And
this amazing woman out on the street investigating flooding.
right. Yeah, that's basically what I was doing. And you told me about the Thriving Earth Exchange community science program, and that match with a scientist, and myself and my partner with Stop the Flooding Now, Bob Jennings. You know, we both were. He could be here today. I'm sorry, but we both were very interested in learning more about the lay of the land here where we lived, and learning, you know, how it floods, why it floods, all this information. And so, you know, that was the big draw, I guess, to Higher Ground. At the time, it was Flood Forum USA, I believe. And so that was our big draw to you guys in doing that. But what I found was community. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get community from this. I was just expecting to learn more information. But I found community on the monthly calls with the different flood groups throughout the Higher Ground network. And I learned that what I was going through here in Virginia Beach, I'm not alone, and that this kind of stuff is going on around the entire nation. And as sad as that sounds, it was actually of comfort to me to know that there were other people just like me having the problems that I have, having the struggles that I have at the city level and state level and federal level. And it really became this sense of community, and that we could work together. We could actually create a unit that makes a difference at a bigger national level. And so that's what I found, and it's been remarkable to me, and it's just been wonderful. I have no other words for it.
Which is a nice time to finish. And thank you so much. Thank you for the tour, and thank you for your wisdom and insight. Every time I speak to you, I learn so much. It's so helpful, and it's so helpful for me as someone who speaks to all the other Higher Ground members, and I can kind of pass on this information. But it's nice to hear. It's nice for me to actually speak to you directly now and share that video so they can hear your voice directly in that
Right.
way.
Well, I just want to say personally, I mean, thank you to you, Harriet, your husband, Stephen. You guys you are the glue that keeps us all together and keeps us moving. You're that motivation behind us, and Higher Ground, you know, doing that, and your sponsors that sponsor Anthropocene Alliance and you know, help fund you guys. I mean, that is it. It's really, really important. And if I could just put it out there, I know. Is it okay for me to put it out there?
It's okay. Yes. Thank you to the Kresge Foundation, who is our main funder. Thank you for yes. I often forget to thank our funders, so I appreciate that.
Yes, all your sponsors, you know, pouring into you financially and pouring into Anthropocene Alliance makes Higher Ground possible, and it makes, you know, I got this shirt from it. You know, I didn't pay a dime for this shirt. It's not the only thing that I've gotten. I've gotten an education, I've gotten community, and I've gotten awareness, and I've been able to grow and become a better person because of it. And I'm very grateful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much then, and have a lovely day.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Happy Memorial Day. Bye-bye.